Hey guys, Paul here. So today I wanted to talk about the strange state of old spells in Yu-Gi-Oh! It was supposed to be alliteration, did not really work, but I'm talking about cards like Monster Reborn and Change of Heart, and there are a few others that I'll get to. These are cards that have long been, considered staple cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Very powerful cards, but they're not really played very much anymore. And I think that the obvious answer to that is power creep, but I wanted to delve a little bit more into it and just answer that question, why, more so just for myself and for fun. It's fun to talk about these things. So let's start with Monster Reborn. It literally summons a monster from either player's graveyard. Zero restrictions whatsoever. Unless the monster itself just cannot be special summoned, you can use Monster Reborn to get anything. You can get back a combo piece, you can get back a searcher, you can get back a boss monster. You can even summon things from your opponent's grave that could be really useful for a comeback. The monster is free, link material, Xyz material, synchro material. It can use its effect. There is no, sort of restriction after you activate it. There's no restriction to activate it. And it doesn't have a hard once per turn. So, I mean, there really is not a reason why you wouldn't want to run Monster Reborn, right? And it's not like decks don't benefit from getting monsters out of the graveyard. So that element of it has not actually been power crept, right? But I think that what it comes down to is the fact that most decks prefer to have in-archetype cards, in-theme cards. So, no matter what deck you're playing, you'd probably rather just use your deck's themed Monster Reborn. And most decks nowadays do have a themed Monster Reborn that they can use specifically to get their cards back, and it gets benefits, right? So obviously Keshtera Burst may be like an extreme example, but it's like an in-archetype Monster Reborn. But pretty much any archetype's got them. And the thing about them is they are searchable, so being able to search your copy of Monster Reborn is really big. They are oftentimes, they just get the benefit of being the named archetype thing. So obviously that means they're searchable, but it also means they're typically recyclable, or maybe you need to have a face-up insert archetype here kind of named card on your field, and so suddenly it fills that role. All in all, I think that Monster Reborn kind of fell out of favor just because it doesn't actually have any name attached. Now, there are still some combo and pile decks that might use it, but still, even amidst those decks, they just don't play it very much because they still would rather have a combo piece in their hand. Like, opening with Monster Reborn can be good if you can set it up, but you might prefer that card be another combo starter or maybe another extender. And so many, archetypes and like small engines that people might run in a combo deck, like or a pile deck, will still kind of do the job that Monster Reborn does on their own, if that makes sense. So, there are plenty of ways to just get dragons back from your graveyard in Dragon Link. You don't really need to run Monster Reborn in order to do that. Like say Bestial Rebellion can like summon itself back from the grave. It's all kind of part of the engine that they've designed. Or, Guard Dragon Pisty can summon any dragon that you want, also from like Banished Zone. But, so there's just kind of this argument that Monster Reborn could be good, but there's always something that sort of outshines it. An interesting litmus test I've always wondered about, though, is what might happen if Monster Reborn went to 3? Like, would things suddenly change? Because I think that while a single copy of Monster Reborn in the game is healthy, if that's maybe the word for it, nobody really seems to play it. I wonder if that would change if people had 3 copies of the card. Would people play like 2 or 3 copies of Monster Reborn? And would it suddenly actually be worth it just because you can rely on seeing it a lot more? And then suddenly the whole idea of it not being a hard once per turn and all that, not having restrictions, suddenly kind of goes away just because it's such a strong card? I'd like to know what you guys think in the comments. And that moves us on to our next card, which is Change of Heart. Another one that I honestly think is, it's been pretty largely power crept by Triple Tactics talent, I would say, because it kind of does Change of Heart's job. In most cases, actually a little bit better by not targeting. But yeah, Change of Heart lets you just steal any monster. And that's kind of crazy when you think about it, right? Like, Brain Control died for this, right? Brain Control got, got like a nerf and errata that made it just outright worse. And now it's kind of just a shell of its former self. But Change of Heart came off the ban list like last year, and people don't really play it. Now, it does see a small bit of niche side deck use. It can be a great way to bait certain negations or interruptions from your opponent because they obviously can't afford to maybe lose whatever their boss monster is or a certain floodgate monster they might be using. So certainly Change of Heart has some applications in the side. I've seen some people play it in that way. And I've seen a few people use it with Triple Tactic Thrust, so like there's something to be said there. But I think generally speaking, Change of Heart has been sort of power crept, and also it has some of the same weaknesses as Monster Reborn. It's not a searchable spell, and it targets. That's obviously not a great thing. But I think the biggest part is just that it only really does one job, and you'd rather have spells that do multiple jobs. You'd rather have your combo starter, your extender, something to recycle, or something to break the opponent's entire board, right? Just taking one monster, as strong as that might have been, 10 years ago, per se, in Yu-Gi-Oh!, it just is not, as good nowadays. Now, it's good when it's like latched onto an effect like Triple Tactics Talent, where you can do it if you need it, and it doesn't target and all that stuff. But also, Triple Tactics Talent does have the option to just draw 2 cards and keep comboing. Or look at your opponent's hand and take something. So the versatility is kind of what makes it super good. I'd say that there are some cards that have not necessarily suffered this fate, but sort of kind of have. Raigeki and Harpy's Feather Duster come to mind. So people obviously do still run Harpy's Feather Duster, especially in the side deck. You certainly see it a lot. I don't think that card's been power crept because it's just going to destroy all the spells and traps, and you really need that against trap decks. Raigeki though, and especially Dark Hole, but Raigeki, a little bit more mixed. People do still run this card. I think that it's still pretty solid. I have seen some people give it up though in favor of Lightning Storm for the versatility. So maybe it's a versatility argument again, kind of similar to Change of Heart versus Triple Tactics Talent, where instead of running, Raigeki that can blow up a whole field, which seems good, you might rather run Lightning Storm because it can do either one, the monsters or the back row, and so it's just a little bit more versatile in that way. Let's see, there was another card I was thinking of too. So one that came to mind for me was, what was it? There's Reasoning. Reasoning is this really weird card. So Reasoning should be really strong in the context of modern Yu-Gi-Oh, right? You'd think that a card that lets you just summon a monster from deck would be really good. But I think that there's a certain amount of unreliability there that also kind of factors in. So Reasoning, your opponent gets to pick the level, and then you just start sending stuff until you get that level. If you hit that level, then you don't get to summon the card. If you hit another level, you get to summon the card. But either way, there's not really any control on your part. So there's that, I think that there's another card that kind of came to mind for me too, it's these old spell cards that draw. So Allure of Darkness, Trade In, even some of the newer ones like Kujikiri Curse and Sacred Sword of the Seven Stars, these cards that, they draw 2 cards for you. And back in the day in Yu-Gi-Oh, that could have been seen as a really strong effect. Allure of Darkness could work even with something as recent as Thunder Dragons. You can banish them and get effects for your Allure of Darkness. Or Trade In, there might be a really good level 8 monster you want to pitch from your hand. But at the end of the day, it seems like in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, I think concentrated searches tend to outvalue, raw card advantage or raw draws. Even, Pot of Extravagance, which can draw you a net 2, is still not as preferable as Pot of Prosperity. It's a 0, but you get to dig 6 cards deep and get a specific card that you need for a situation. So I guess to really sum it all up, it seems like these old spell cards mostly have fallen out of favor because they aren't versatile. They are good cards, but they just are not actually able to, get specifically the things you need. You don't get to pick your draws with those draw spells. You don't get to, just take a monster with Triple Tactics Talent. You can do several different things. And Monster Reborn, you don't get the versatility of being an archetype card. So all in all, it's kind of interesting seeing these cards that in many cases don't have hard once per turns. In many cases still do get just as much card advantage and still have strong effects, just find themselves out of vogue. What do you guys think? Do you think that there is space for these cards to work? I think Triple Tactics Thrust has kind of revitalized a few of them as specific outs and things, but generally, they kind of just aren't very popular anymore. You could even say the same about other, spell trap removal, trap cards even. They kind of have suffered a bit of the same fate, like Mirror Force or Torrential Tribute, for instance, just aren't really played. But that's a different conversation, sort of slightly, kind of. Anyways, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And I'll see you next time. I'm going to talk about more Yu-Gi-Oh things. I've been thinking about Yu-Gi-Oh lately. So subscribe so you don't miss it. See you guys in the next one. Pass turn.